So automating network operations and priorities. Now, CableLabs is a consortium of cable operators, and as a consortium of cable operators, I do fit into the operator category, but we are primarily an R&D organization, so I'm going to give you a vision which is actually an R&D vision rather than necessarily a cable operator vision. And I had the benefit of actually seeing Joanne's slides before I produced my slides. So I was able to delete the first slide I was going to put up and start with something completely different. So I wanted to put up something which I'd love to get some feedback on, which is my vision for the network ultimately becoming a data center. And if you think about data centers today, racks of homogeneous server devices and connected with very fast optical interconnects, well, that's pretty much what a telecommunications or a cable network is, isn't it? So Joanne's going to put up a slide which shows the operational vision for using programmable resources and applying a zero-touch automation overlay to that. So I thought I would put something up which is about, once you've done all of that, what can you do with it that's really cool? In my mind, it is that you start to use the network as a programmable resource where you can stand up applications anywhere in the network space. So looking at this rather crude slide, I wish I had some artistic talent, but I don't have any of that. So this is my idea of how I would describe the future of applications, right? So this is really the future of applications. It's not a future of networking. Networking supports this idea. The idea is that in the internet, where we all know and love the OTT players that live there, and those are the things that we consume on our end devices, right? Everything from Facebook, Messenger, Google search, and all the good things that happen in the end user environment, and all the things that are happening over here. Who believes that the bandwidth of requirements of future applications are going to go down? Who believes that the future bandwidth the requirements of applications are going to go up? Who believes they're going to go up a lot? Yeah, you see exactly my point. So, if that's the case, and I know that Sienna would probably disagree with this vision, which is that actually this bandwidth here between the regional data center and your end user, the further you get into the core, now you're sharing that resource with millions and billions of customers. So it makes absolute sense, doesn't it, to put very high bandwidth applications closer to the customer. This is the idea for edge compute, right? Everyone's heard of edge compute. Who believes that edge compute is going to work and be an important part of networking? Great. So do I. So this is actually a kind of cable architecture, but it's actually very strikingly similar to a telco architecture. Some of you know me, know that I spent a lot of my time in BT, most of my life in BT actually. So when I say DOCSIS here, that could be DSL or fiber or some other access, right? But this is the edge compute platform, and I contend that would sit in the cable head end, but that could sit inside a base station, or it could sit inside an AT&T or Verizon central office. And sitting out here is the network interface device. I thought about just calling it a NID, but actually I thought, I'm a cable guy, so I'm going to put cable modem there, because cable modems are really cool. Somewhere inside that home is probably some kind of gateway device. It's a server or something else that's serving the inside of the home, or the enterprise premises, or even the street or somewhere locally. And this is really quite simple, really. If you require a software stack to deliver your application down here, I contend that some of that software is going to run in the most appropriate place. So the parameters that you would take into account as to where you would locate that compute and application software is whether or not you need high bandwidth and low latency. This is the edge part. But unfortunately, it costs more to put storage closer to the edge, doesn't it? And actually, it probably costs quite a bit to put compute closer to the edge as well. But out here in the regional data center, you've got lower bandwidth, higher latency, lower storage costs, and lower compute costs. So I challenge the application developers of the future and some of my public cloud providers to think about an architecture which starts to disaggregate applications. So the developers probably don't need to know exactly where their application runs, but it will be divided up and runs in the appropriate place. So that's my kind of vision for the network as a data center. Then Tim asked what would be the priorities. And I just like this picture, by the way. This picture has nothing to do with the content of the slide. I just think that that's a really cool picture. And I bought it from Shutterstock, so it's actually legal. Telecommunications networks are not enterprise IT environments. Now, some of my statements on here are not going to be wholly agreed with by some of the software people at this conference, right? Telecommunications networks are not enterprise IT environments. They use enterprise IT as part of operations, but they are not an enterprise IT environment like Google is, like Facebook is, like some of these OTT players. We have massive scale. We're heavily regulated. We hate the idea, but we are heavily regulated because we're critical national infrastructures. Service continuity must persist through successive waves of technology. I spent 40 years in R&D in BT. I think I counted at least 5 or maybe 6 successive waves of technology, and the products had to continue working even when the platform changed. So guess what? In order not to change the service level agreement or the specification of the service, you just built another platform in order that you didn't have to migrate customers to the new platform and change the service level agreements and the specs. It's really hard to do. Network operations evolved over decades and are unique to each operator and their environment. This is the challenge for zero-touch service management. The operations environment is different for every operator. So you have to figure out what the commonality is and then implement the solutions for that common place. Work stack priorities depend on regulatory as well as commercial imperatives. Trust me, I hit this one head on. We were doing, 15 years ago, a new network transformation, and then the UK regulator mandated that we had to do something within a certain period of time, or we would be fined a certain percentage of our turnover. Regulators have that power over telecoms operators. Guess what? We could not get any of that platform operations software done until that regulatory imperative was completed. And then there was another one, and another one, and another one. So you're not in charge of your destiny unless you have your own operations environment and you're able to do these things according to your local cadence. Open source needs to adapt to this environment. Now, I heard a lot of flack over the last few years that I'm a standards guy now, right? The future's open source. Why are you bothering with specs? It takes too long. You're a waterfall process. We're agile. We can do this stuff. Actually, it's not about me adapting. It's about all of us adapting, isn't it? Open source needs to adapt to this environment because each operator needs control of their destiny for the reasons that I just outlined. Timely standards are and will remain critically important. So, Tim, I did put some priorities up. Finalize the foundation NFV standards. So later on this afternoon, you're going to have the ETSI NFV tutorial. I've just seen technical manager Joanne Trier from Docomo here. Joanne, you are? Joanne's going to be outlining how we're going to get that stuff done, right? Quickly. Converge industry requirements for automation, so ETSI ZSM. I say Z because I'm English. ZSM. Solve the security challenges, trust and identity. I was glad to see that on your slide as the top one, isn't it? And then finally, explore possibilities, identify low-hanging fruits, build confidence, transform incrementally, because that's the world of telecoms. Thanks.